Hello, everyone. I'm Judge Penny Wolfgang. Baseball is back, and Buffalo is the epicenter of America's favorite pastime, yes. So if you want to get the big picture about the history of the game and the role our hometown here, right here, Buffalo, played in it, then I want you to pick up a copy of this book, The Seasons of Buffalo Baseball, 1857 to 2020, written by one of our favorite people, you guessed it, Mike Billoni, Mr. Buffalo in Mr. Baseball in Buffalo. That's a tongue twister. Mr. Baseball, hi, welcome, Mike. So you've been so closely associated with baseball here from your days back at the Courier Express, the newspaper, and of course with the Buffalo Bisons all those years. So it's only fitting that you come up with a definitive book about the game and the relationship to Buffalo, our city. So who did you work with? Did you have to work with people to create this?
Well, Your Honor, you're so kind, and you know our friendship goes back many, many years, that ironically my start in baseball came as a kid growing up in Kenmore and playing Little League Baseball. Unfortunately, I couldn't hit the curveball, so I ended up becoming a sports writer and covering the game. This book, though, is really the work of our historian, Joe Overfield. And he published the 100 seasons of Buffalo baseball in 1985. And then 3 years ago, I worked with his son, Jim Overfield, on the update and revision. And it's been out since November, and it's been a huge hit.
And timely, to say the least. So we have some special video clips that Rich Lee from our WBBZ team put together that we will see throughout the program. And you just mentioned Joe Overfield. We're going to hear from his son, Jim, on how he completed this book and worked with you.
When he cleaned out my dad's house, when he brought back box after box of stuff that he had kept, not organized. A lot of it ended up in the Buffalo History Museum, but a lot of it ended up down in our basement. And so when I ran across copies of a publication that the ball club sponsored beginning in the late 80s and early 90s called the Bison. And one of its features was that my dad wrote a column called Bison Tales on some aspect of Buffalo baseball history, some of which was worked over material he'd already published, others with brand new stuff. And then I picked up another book. It was written by Paul Ranallo, who was the son of a longtime Courier Express columnist, Phil Ranallo, who worked in the sports department. And Paul published a book in which which included a lot of the columns that his dad had written. So I called Paul up, and he talked a little bit about the book, and I said, that'd be a nice idea to maybe get these articles my dad did in the Bison, put them together and publish them. And then, one thing led to another. I contacted Paul Langendorfer, who had just published a book on history of Buffalo baseball using a lot of my dad's material. And Paul said, hey, well, you should do more than just publish the Bison stuff. You should, let's do a whole new version of your dad's book. And we naively said, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Let's go ahead with it. Of course, at the time I was living in Burlington and Paul was living in Colorado. And I thought to myself after a month or so, this is probably not going to work. So we called Mike Billoni. And as they say, the rest is history.
So the question is, how'd you find all the photos and connect all the stories in this magnificent book?
Penny, it is an absolute amazing journey. Number one, the early years, from the early 1800s through 1984, Joe Overfield had a great collection. That was his hobby, being a historian. And the Bisons, everyone went to him for baseball stories. 3 years ago, Jim and I went through all his files, pulled those out, scanned them, and then Jim, who is a retired history professor at University of Vermont, he researched, and I went into my files. So the book is filled with photos.
Now we're making Buffalo history here, baseball history and Buffalo history, this summer as the Toronto Blue Jays are playing games in our downtown Salem Field. And when you work with Bob and Mindy Rich all those years ago, who own our minor league Bison's team, did you ever think that you would be sitting here talking about a major league games being played right here in Buffalo? I know it was a dream, but...
Well, yeah, we did dream, and we did feel that we would have it here. They tried very hard. They tried to buy the Montreal Expos, and then we worked very, very hard to bring an expansion team here. But when that dream faded many, many years ago, and then because of COVID-19, amazingly, you know, the Toronto Blue Jays are here, and for the first time in 105 years, Major League Baseball has played in front of fans in Buffalo, New York.
This will be part of our history when you do part two. So sports writer Mike Harrington had some comments on this book and our Major League connection.
No one ever imagined what could happen here in 3 weeks' time. How do you completely reimagine and rebrand a stadium? And that's what the Blue Jays and Bisons had to do. The Blue Jays were in a desperate situation and needed a place to play. The Bisons are a franchise that'll move mountains for you. Pittsburgh isn't going to do that. Baltimore's not going to do that. The Bisons really teamed up with them and really created a tremendous compromise. And the Blue Jays, in a week's time, really felt like they had a home park, and that's something they didn't have at all at the start of 2020. They're no longer nomads. They now have a place they can call home for the summer.
Where do you see this chapter fitting in with all the other chapters of Buffalo baseball?
Well, it's really an incredible change in fortune in really a space of a month. You're talking the end of the minor league season. It never got underway. It was canceled. Really a low moment. No baseball in Buffalo for the first time since 1978. And a month later, Major League Baseball in Buffalo for the first time, if you want to go to the Federal League, in 1915, but maybe way back to 1885 to the National League. Something no one could have envisioned, and really a morale booster for everyone involved after the incredible downer of no baseball.
Memories of Joe Overfield and the importance of this book?
You know, something that strikes me right away when I think of Joe Overfield, I think back to 1997, the night Jeff Manto became the first player to go deep 3 times in a game. And in the 7th inning, Jeff Manto was about to come up in the next inning. I think it was the 8th inning. And the phone rings in the press box. And I'm told, Mike, you got to come to get the phone. It's Joe Overfield. I say, what does Joe Overfield want in the 7th inning of this game tonight? And he simply said, Mike, I need to tell you something. The last time a Bison hit 4 home runs in a game was Billy Botness against Wilkes-Barre in 1895. Who else could tell you something from 1895 but Joe Overfield? And that really, to me, is the core of this book. The man's passion for Buffalo baseball, his encyclopedic knowledge, is something that has lived through the years and now is being brought back to life again.
One best Bison memory?
First time the Bisons won a championship in the modern era, in 1997, in Des Moines, Iowa. They get the final out, a double play. Torey Lovullo calls for the ball from Richie Sexton. He had it in his mind, I want the ball from the last out to present to the Riches in the clubhouse after the game. The game won on a home run by Sean Casey, who disappeared for an hour after the game. The media couldn't find him. Where was Sean Casey? He was in the concourse on a payphone before cell phones, calling his dad in Pittsburgh, saying, we won the championship, I hit a home run, and I just got called up to the big leagues to the Cleveland Indians. And 20 years later, Sean Casey said it was in a concourse in Iowa. It did feel like Field of Dreams. It was an incredible moment for the entire organization to win that game, for the Riches to get that trophy. 20 years later, Sean Casey still looks at it as one of his biggest days in baseball.
So how important was our late mayor, James Griffin, in making baseball a big deal here in the city?
In part 2 of the book, we have some great stories, and one of them is a story that we put together on the building of Pilot Field. And back then, Congressman Brian Higgins, when they were dedicating the statue that Jimmy's family and daughter Maureen spearheaded, he looked at the stadium and he said, this is the stadium that Jimmy built. And truer words were never heard. And he really did. This was his vision, to have a downtown stadium built. He really wanted to have a dome stadium. But then when Bob and Mindy Rich got involved and we went to Governor Cuomo for their support, he put together a Sportsplex committee. And one of the people quietly behind the scenes who was very influential in the state providing a lot of funding for that $42 million stadium was the late Frank McGuire. He was on the state Sportsplex committee with George Steinbrenner and former President Donald Trump. And Frank fought hard to bring funds here to Buffalo.
Well, let's talk about that first day a little bit. It must have been something that will go down not only in history, but in your memory. So when we opened in 1988, and what do you remember about that day after dreams come true?
Well, it truly was surreal. I mean, as you know, politics in Buffalo could be a little bit testy at times.
Gee, really?
And the challenges we had to go through to get to opening day, that was behind us. Now it was a beautiful day, and we have a great photo of all these people filling in on the streets as Bob Rich and the governor and the mayor are there. The late Ralph Hubble was the MC, and they did an event outside. They cut the ribbon, came inside, and then the picture before the game of Jimmy Griffin playing catch with Mario Cuomo, who ironically, and it's in the book, played minor league baseball in the Pittsburgh Pirates chain. And he ended his baseball career because he got hit in the head with a fastball. Luckily, he had a helmet.
You're not making this up.
No, him and I had it in common.
This is not politics, right?
Yeah. But yeah, that was such a memorable opening. And yeah, but Jimmy was the key. And then after he passed, they put the statue there. Former South District council member, now Erie County Clerk, Mickey Kearns, made a motion that was passed unanimously to change the address to 1 James D. Griffin Plaza. So, Jimmy lives, his legacy will go on forever.
And the great statue right in front.
I
love it. I love that statue. So one of the characters from that era, besides talking about Jimmy Griffin, not that he was a character, but one of the characters from the era of Buffalo baseball all the way back then is still active today. So let us meet the Conehead.
What memories do you have of the early years of the Bisons when Mayor Griffin brought baseball back?
It's some of the best days of my life. You got to remember, I started vending beer in '72, and unfortunately, it was 7 or 8 summers that I didn't sell beer because there was no baseball. And baseball has always been my first love. And when you had the chance to get a baseball team back, I was thrilled. And I remember Mayor Griffin. I remember serving him and Tommy. In true confessions, they were some of my best customers. And I remember the job that Donnie Colpoys did. Donnie was a jack of all trades for that ball club. He held it together. I mean, I don't know how he did it, because there was a few times we would get our paychecks on Friday and we'd run to the bank because money might not be there, and a few times there wasn't. I didn't care. It was a second front for me, but just the thrill of being able to work there and be part of Bison baseball and the fans was enough payment for me. I go back to about 1962, a little bit before the Pony story, but reading all that stuff and then going back in time, my God, it's just amazing. And that's the great thing about baseball, that it's timeless. It's absolutely timeless. The statistics mean so much in baseball, and to have that documented right in front of you, it's just fantastic. And the memories that I see in there in my lifetime is just fantastic.
When we come back, more from Mike Billoni and others as we celebrate the seasons of Buffalo baseball.